If you spend enough time in the mountains, you learn something pretty simple. The biggest achievements don't happen in a single moment. They're built on months and even years of effort, reaching for bold ideas and a willingness to push outside your comfort zone. That's exactly what this season of Planet Visionaries has been all about. I've had the chance to sit down with some of the most inspiring people working to protect our planet. What I love about these conversations is that each guest is such an individual. They all have gone so far down a unique path, and they're so passionate about the things that they're working on, that I come out of each conversation more motivated to work on my own projects. It's a reminder that everybody has some role to fill if they're willing to follow their passion far enough and work hard enough at it. And so every interview I do, I come out of it feeling excited and sort of ready to take on the world. And it's a good reminder that everybody has some role to fill in solving climate crisis. Because basically, if you're excited about something and you try really hard, you can make a big impact. So in this special episode, you'll hear from conservation powerhouse Kris Tompkins, who helps to protect millions of acres of wild landscape in South America, and innovator Miranda Wang, who's transforming plastic waste into new materials and rethinking what a circular economy can look like. You'll hear part of the powerful conversation with Mark Ruffalo and Gloria Walton from the Solutions Project about building a clean energy future that works for everyone. And we'll dive back into the world beneath the waves with legendary ocean photographer Christina Mittermeier and Paul Nicklin, and marine biologist Dr. David Gruber, whose project SETI uses machine learning and robotics to translate what sperm whales are actually saying. Whether you're discovering Planet Visionaries for the first time or you've been listening all season, this final episode of Season 5 will inspire you to take action on whatever scale you can to help protect our natural world. I'm Alex Honnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Honnold Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries. One of the great things about doing the show is meeting incredible people who do amazing work. I've loved hearing how partners of the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative benefit from its support and how that has made a transformative impact on the change they can make in the world. Here's one of my favorites from this season. He's a world-renowned photographer who quite literally grew up on the ice. From a young age, the frozen landscapes of the Arctic weren't just somewhere that he visited, they were his home. That deep connection to wild places would go on to shape his life's work, turning him into one of the most powerful visual storytellers for oceans and polar regions.
My name is Paul Nicklin. I'm a conservation photographer, a journalist, an artist, and an explorer. I remember being very upset when my family moved to the Arctic. And all of a sudden, here I am in this cold place, but it very quickly switched for me from sort of concern and worry of this isolation to absolute magic. I fell in love with the Arctic. It worked its way deep into my heart. When you live in a community of 190 people and you're one of 3 non-Inuit families and there's no telephone, no television, no radio, you spend all of your time outside playing under the aurora borealis, walking across the sea ice. Growing up on Baffin Island again in this tiny community, my mom had the only enlarger in town, and she had a Pentax K1000, and she would get her rolls of Kodachrome 64, and I would just always watch her make these beautiful prints of this life on the ice. And one day when I was 16 years old, we went on a trip together as a family, and she actually let me hold her camera. And then at some point she gave me her camera. And I felt like I was Jacques Cousteau. I was the next great explorer out with this camera. And we came back from the Arctic, moved to Vancouver Island, British Columbia in 1986. And my mom took all of her life's work, all of her slides, all of her originals, put them in a big pile, put gasoline in a fire and just burned them all. Because the life in the North was so hard for her. I'd worked so many years on this assignment. I started in 2002 going up there to do narwhals, and one critical component was to be able to try and find the narwhals from the air and then to try and get aerial photographs of them. And we went flying out and finally there they were at first 5, 10, 20, and then all of a sudden there's 1,000 narwhals. But we went back to camp just to put some more fuel in the airplane so we could go back out and keep doing the shoot. As we're doing that, I stepped through this rotten big chunk of ice. I started to go down. I fall through the sea ice all the time, and it's always a big joke. I don't mind. But this time the ice was rolling, and I was about to get sucked underwater, and I wasn't going to come back because these chunks were rolling inwards like this. And I reached up and I grabbed the rope on my Comatic on my sled, and it dislocated my arm. And finally, one of the guys saw me. They dragged me out. It took them 2 hours to reset my shoulder because it was so frozen. Yeah, pushing your body to the limits to come back with these important stories.
Paul is not the only explorer bringing these worlds back to the surface. His partner, Christina Mittermeier, also an incredible photographer and ocean storyteller, shared a moment with us that honestly sounds like something out of a movie. She was deep underwater on a dive when she suddenly had this feeling, like she was being watched. Here's what happened next. What is it like to be in your own tiny little world for many hours underwater looking for a tiny octopus?
You tell me, Alex.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think...
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's probably awesome if you love what you do and you're comfortable where you are and everything is going well in your world. But I mean, if you're having a hard time in your own thoughts, the idea of just being, contained underwater like that for hours, I suspect for some people that's their worst nightmare.
It's very liberating and it's very zen, but it also has its moments of fear. I was telling the story the other day. You were in the audience of diving at night in Indonesia, and all of a sudden looking up from whatever rock I was looking underneath, and all the other divers are gone. I don't see anybody else's light, and it's pitch black. And people have warned us. They've said, it's scary here because there's very large crocodiles that come from Australia across the open ocean to Indonesia. And there's been instances of divers at night, all of a sudden you turn around and there's a crocodile there, like the thing you're not expecting. So this thought creeps into my mind as I'm sitting there alone at 100 feet. And all of a sudden I feel like something is looking at me. That feeling? Mm-hmm. And I turn around and there's this tiny little squid just hovering over my head. And it's kind of like curiously looking, what are you doing? And so when I turn towards it, my lights hit it. And all of a sudden it gets all excited. And it starts changing colors because squid and octopus have cells on their skin that allows them to change color and produce their own light. It's just like a magnificent light show. It's incredible. And so this little squid, curiously swimming around, checking out my lights, it catches a glimpse of its own reflection on my dome, and then it goes nuts. It has these tentacles.
It sees a friend.
It's
like amazing.
Reaching out, and it's so close to me. Of course, I'm in a rebreather, so there's no bubbles. He's not scared. I had like the most magical half hour with this little animal. And when I was coming up alone from my night dive in the pitch black, thinking about crocodiles, I kept thinking, I'm so lucky because I get to meet this creature.
I was going to say, but we're so lucky that you had that experience because I got to see the image and it is incredible. I didn't know that squid could do that. I didn't know they could look like that. It's like
extraterrestrial, right?
Yeah. It definitely looked like something. It kind of looked like something out of an alien movie, like some kind of horror thing. But it is incredible, and it for me anyway, it really helps highlight the diversity of life on Earth. We're like, oh, who even knew that there were creatures like that? I think that's a real gift and an opportunity for you to be able to share those kinds of images.
Amazed and in awe and inspired by our planet every day.
Talk about your work with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative.
I think people like you and I who have these careers, you start small doing a little thing, and that to get to the top, you have to climb Mount Everest. And so you get to base camp when you become a National Geographic assignment photographer, and then you climb to the next place, you get an exhibition. And when you get invited to be part of the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, you're close to the summit.
You're somewhere way up there, Camp 4, Camp 5. You're nearing the top.
You're really reaching for the top now.
And how has that helped with your work?
So Rolex is an incredibly beautiful brand that has a lot of alignment in values, which is important to me. But they have done something for me that is invaluable, and that they've opened up their media footprint, the relationship that they have with important communications outlets like this podcast. And they give me that microphone to talk about the things I care about, which to me means everything. To have that conversation in those large outlets is...
Yeah, I suppose in a way that's the whole point of your work, is to be able to have those conversations and to show your work to people who, to make sure that people actually see the work.
Yeah, and they do so much elevating what I do to become really an art form. And they support the idea of my art becoming the gateway that allows people to see what's happening in the front lines.
Yeah.
And to do it in a way that's hopeful and inspiring and hopefully beautiful.
Christina's stories from the ocean really remind you how incredible and how fragile this planet is. What's funny is that in our conversation, she told me that public speaking is something that she's always struggled with. I actually heard her tell that story once at an event in New York City, and honestly, she brought the house down. It was one of the best talks I'd ever heard, and you'd never have guessed that she was nervous about it at all. And that sense of wonder that she creates is powerful, because once people really start paying attention to the beauty of the planet, the next question becomes pretty obvious. What do we do about it? That's exactly what actor and climate advocates Mark Ruffalo and Gloria Walton are focused on through the Solutions Project, working with communities across the US to turn climate concern into real, practical, clean energy solutions. Because you're obviously running in circles where people have money, and so you can fundraise in that way. And so how do you
It's
well,
so hard.
in theory,
It's
right?
so hard.
But so how do you convince people to give to frontline communities that are actually facing the worst effects of climate change, who are actually struggling day to day?
What we found, and what's worked best for me is to use my platform to get the people who we need to hear from in front of the camera, and that's been probably the most successful thing in my advocacy.
And thank you for it, because you do it exceptionally well.
Thank
I know
you.
you probably
Thank
are
you.
the most outspoken environmental advocate in all of
That's so sad.
all of entertainment. Why is it that you've been willing to go there while so many other people, in Hollywood or entertainment, whatever, who probably share somewhat similar views, aren't necessarily willing to express them publicly?
I'll tell you what's been so informative to me has actually been being on the front line. Being at the very edge of these protests, whether it's going and lobbying in Albany to stop the fracking in New York State, or going to rallies, or ending up at Standing Rock with my brothers and sisters, my indigenous brothers and sisters who I met during my time on the front lines of the fracking fight in New York State. And I'm developing these relationships, and not only that, I'm developing, experience with these people and seeing what they're fighting for, right? So, I feel like I have a foot solidly in that.
Totally.
Like, that's irrefutable. No one could take that from me. You can say what you want about it, but I was there, and so I get a lot of inspiration. Plus, I know them. These are like my extended family now. Like, I can't let this stuff happen to them and still be the human being that I want to say to the world that I am, And so, I would invite anyone to get to be in the mix of it, instead of just being on the outside of it and lending your name occasionally.
Do you think that's the key ingredient that kind of got you so deeply into advocacy, is the fact that you actually showed up and did it and met these people and made relationships? Is that why?
I'd say
You've gone places that other people haven't, basically?
I had in my heart a
Yes.
love for the nature.
Yes.
For nature. As a little boy, like I was telling you, I grew up in a forest. Like, that was everything to me. And I saw Lake Michigan get cleaned up, in the 70s when literally the fish had cancerous growths on their faces. I'd see them kind of swimming sideways. And I saw in the span of 5 years, that literally changed, and the water become clean and the fish become healthy again. I saw it happen. Like, we can do this, And so that was my ethos, And so when I heard the call and I saw it happening, and it's in my heart to have this relationship to the world and nature and people, that also informs it.
What I really like about the work that Mark Ruffalo, Gloria Walton, and the Solutions Project are doing is that it proves that real change is possible when communities come together around practical solutions. And honestly, what they're doing through the Solutions Project is very similar to what I've tried to do through the Honnold Foundation, which is probably why I'm so partial to the work. But protecting our future isn't just about building new systems. It's also about protecting the wild spaces that we still have. That's something Kris Tompkins has dedicated her life to. Before becoming one of the world's most influential conservationists, she was the CEO of Patagonia. Since then, she has helped protect and restore millions of acres of wilderness across South America with a level of determination and leadership that's very inspiring to see. There's a moment in our conversation where Kris opens up in a really honest way, showing vulnerability, strength, and a kind of fearless clarity all at once. It's one of those moments that really stayed with me. Here's Kris Tompkins. How do you maintain motivation for taking on bigger projects? You're kind of touching on this from your personal pivot from being the CEO of Patagonia to running Tompkins Conservation and creating all these parks. But how do you, at age 70, what do you say, 70?
75.
75. At age 75, how do you decide to take on an even bigger challenge?
I mean, that's what I love. I'm going to put the hammer down until I can't.
Or you can't hammer anymore.
Because I have no fear. You have to remember, for a few reasons, and certainly number one, the day Doug died, first of all, I thought it was Yvonne. We were getting these broken calls. I thought Yvonne was dying or something had happened to him. And then, of course, I find out it's Doug. Anyway, I have no fear.
You mean because nothing worse than that can...
Yeah, I mean, things have happened in my lifetime, all of which I'm grateful for, whether it's difficult or not. So for me to say, let's go for broke. Let's go do what it really takes to bring these species back, to save these rivers, to look at the earth as a participant instead of a factory. I have no limits.
Where does that deep love come from for nature? I mean, why put the effort in?
Because though I love many humans, and of course in the arts and music and philosophers and writers and climbers and what we humans are doing to ourselves, but to every other living thing on this planet, I don't want to be on that train. I want to be on the other team. I had the chance to visit with Pope Francis in his library at the Vatican a few years ago, just the two of us. Just
wow,
visiting.
As one does.
Yeah.
How was that?
It was a great invitation.
Wow.
And Sofia Hinonen, who I've worked with for 25 years, she's the head of Argentina. Pope Francis was Argentine. So the genesis must have come from something there because we worked in Argentina for so long. And I tell you, Pope Francis was someone who really understands the mournful outcome of how we humans have decided to live and where we place ourselves in the scheme of life. And it's boring to talk about this. People roll their eyes. I don't care. I do not accept it.
What do you mean the mournful consequence?
It's like Sir David Attenborough says, there are billions of people who are being affected by the way we largely Westerners live. And they're the very people who have no say, and they're the very people who can't get out of the way. So that's on the human side. And on the non-human side, you know this all very well. We are losing species so fast that the outcome is quite clear. So I think the question isn't, why do we do this? I think the real question is, why isn't everybody doing it? We're not exceptional. We certainly shouldn't be exceptional. We should be commonplace today.
We've just heard about the wild landscapes Kris Tompkins has spent decades protecting. Now we're heading to the Ecuadorian Amazon, where the challenge is a little bit different. For generations, indigenous communities there have traveled the river in dugout canoes. But more recently, many have had to rely on gas motors, expensive to run and hard on the environment. Oliver Utney started wondering if there might be another way. Working with local communities and with the support from the Honnold Foundation, his group, Car Solar, is building solar-powered riverboats and charging stations along the river. Oliver told me that the idea of solar-powered boats wasn't really his. It was something that many indigenous communities along the river had already imagined. But what I also learned from our conversation was that by reducing the cost of river travel, Car Solar has helped ease the demand for building new roads, which in turn reduces pressure from illegal mining and deforestation.
I think 95% of all deforestation in the Amazon occurs within just a few kilometers of roads.
Which makes sense because you can only extract the timber, by truck.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can see it in these satellite photos where wherever a road goes, the forest just steadily disappears. It's become clear that if there's a viable future for the Amazon, it has to include stopping road building. And then there's all these other effects, and I've been able to see them living in Ecuador and having seen the communities before the roads came and after the roads came. It's really dramatic. The communities that were not reachable by roads when I got there were pretty much totally self-sufficient in terms of food. And once the road comes in, they connect to the market economy.
And then you have to start selling things, which means you start cutting things down or extracting things or mining things. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I don't think that everything about the outside world is bad.
Yeah, it's like for good and bad because you get medicine, you get access to healthcare, all this kinds of things.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, but I think that the Amazon is this interconnected network of thousands and thousands of kilometers of navigable rivers. Then I had the opportunity to go and live in an indigenous community for 2 months. There, my experience changed my life, really. And so I decided to go back to the US and study solar energy and did that for a year and then came back to Ecuador. And then this one day, I was talking to this guy who had been working with solar energy in the Amazon for decades. And then he said, well, you could do a boat that works with solar energy. And that was a moment that I will never forget. I remember where I was sitting and it just kind of became an obsession where I started talking about it with everybody I saw and learned that a lot of the indigenous people had also had the same idea. And that there were even legends in the Achuar culture about what they called an electric fish boat that becomes a means of transportation and carries all the people and the animals around the rivers. So the people at the organization that I was at said, we have this connection to MIT, and we got them to do a formal study, and the results came back and they were super positive. And so then I had MIT's seal of approval, and that's really when things got started. And there were a lot of chapters and setbacks to try to build the first boat. It took us, I think from the time we got the results of that study until the time we put the first boat in the water, it was almost 4 years. But that was really what set it off.
Talking to Oliver reminded me how much of our planet's future depends on bold vision and decisive action. But some of the most loved episodes this season weren't just about conservation and innovation, but also about science and the people pushing the boundaries of what's possible. That's exactly what innovators like Miranda Wang, who co-founded Novaloop, and Shay Sethi, who co-founded Ambercycle, are both doing. They're taking big ideas like turning plastic waste into new raw materials and showing how science and entrepreneurship can tackle some of our most pressing environmental challenges. Not bad for two people who started their own companies in their dorm rooms and were CEOs by the age of 21. Here's Miranda and Shay talking about what processes they use to transform plastics.
Shay and I are targeting different starting materials and we'll make different products, but both of us are doing it with new chemical processes. So for what Novaloop is doing is, we're taking the plastic that's for example, used in just a shopping bag. We take a shopping bag, we break it down into chemicals, and then the final material we build out of those chemicals are plastic pellets that are then used to make polyurethane. So polyurethane is, you all know it. It's like your mattress. Your mattress foam is a foamed up polyurethane.
You say you all know it, but honestly, I don't know. We just bought a new mattress because nobody knows that. I think of a mattress as a mattress. I think it's made of
a memory foam mattress. A memory foam mattress is so comfortable because the whole thing is perfectly blown up to hold your weight, and that material is polyurethane. That polyurethane is a chemical.
But this is maybe a fundamental problem with the modern world is that I wouldn't really know that there's plastic inside my mattress because I don't know what's in my mattress because all I feel is the soft exterior and I'm like, this is, it's magic. I mean, so much of the modern world is
also
magic.
Plastic. Yeah. It's also plastic. And that is the plastic that Shay works in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you think about the biggest plastics used in the world, there's polyethylenes and then polyesters. And so Miranda's working on polyethylene and we're working on polyester, and these are pervasive in our everyday life. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's kind of my experience. So whenever I see something, it's like, well, that's just a form of plastic.
I don't know. To me, it seems impossible to take a garment. I don't even understand what's in the garment to begin with. And then how do you separate it back into its constituent parts and maintain the same purity?
If you take a t-shirt, it's a mixture of mostly polyester and cotton. What we do is we separate those materials using new chemistry, and those materials get separated at the molecular level. And so the polyester comes out, the nylon comes out, the cellulose comes out.
Does that works?
The source of my gray hairs is actually getting it to work. But I think if you step back, it's like, okay, wow, like this is pretty crazy. I can throw old clothing or old stuff into a set of stainless steel tanks, and I can develop a process that actually purifies these materials. And I think for both of us, it's small steps that if you zoom out in a 10, 20-year period, it's like, wow, this is really, it's true scientific innovation, which is really, really exciting.
And the important thing is, like, you can't just do that in the lab and be like, well, look, let's go get a Nobel Prize. Like, that's not good enough. You have to build factories and eventually be able to make all these things, not only reliably to the right quality people are used to, but you got to be able to do it with the right sustainability, because you can't be a very polluting process, right? You have to be at least no worse than the current fossil fuel or extraction, natural resource extraction value chain. And then at the end, the price has to be something people can accept. You still got to make circular shoes, circular shirts, and be able to sell them at a price that everybody can afford. So it's very challenging.
Miranda and Shay really highlighted for me how much of our future depends on seeing an idea through, especially when it's not been done before. And that mindset is exactly what drives scientists like Dr. David Gruber. He's exploring the oceans and unlocking secrets that we've barely even imagined, using science to expand our understanding of life on Earth and to guide how we protect it for generations to come. He founded Project SETI, which is learning how to translate what sperm whales are actually saying. But that makes it sound way too easy. He found it incredibly difficult and put his career on the line with this idea. Here's a glimpse into his incredible work and how he got this project off the ground. Let's get into it. So what is Project SETI?
So we're the Cetacean Translation Initiative. We're the largest interspecies communication project in history now. 50 plus scientists from like 8 disciplines that are all working shoulder to shoulder to basically one goal is to translate what a whale is saying.
Are you capable of translating whale communication?
I come to this from like decades of working with animals and looking at animal perception. So I think, and also of building interdisciplinary teams. Like I love kind of putting teams together of people with different skill sets and trying to see what their strong points are. It is working. I'll just short. It seemed really risky. Like I got on a TED stage in 2020 and I was like, we're going to be translating what whales have to say. And then the hard work kind of started. I just put my whole reputation on the line and said that we're going to do something incredibly difficult and challenging, probably like Free Solo-ish. And then I had to do it. So we're kind of still, we're not there yet.
In the midst of doing it. Okay, so this might be a silly question, but what is the primary challenge in translating whale communication?
The primary challenge is actually getting the information out of the ocean.
You mean capturing the whale sounds?
Capturing the whale sounds, but they have to be captured.
In the context, I guess?
In the context.
Yeah.
Imagine like we're baby whales and we're learning language. So you can't just learn language with no context. Mm-hmm. You're watching, you're picking up one word at a time, you're piecing things together. So we need the same amount of information that you needed as a kid to start learning things.
And so how do you capture the context?
The context is that's where the robotics comes in and a lot of listening technology. So we have their biosensors that go on the backs of whales, very small, and their suction is inspired by suckerfish. So they only stay on for a short period of time. They're designed in Rob Wood's lab, another Nat Geo explorer up at Harvard. And so they go on there, and there's a lot of sensors in this tiny little tag. There's 3 microphones, so you could see that whale that's talking, as well as noticing the locations of the other whales around it. There's also like a gyroscope, so you could see the position, the body position of the whale. And then there's also a depth sensor. So you could hear conversations between whales, and then when it starts diving, you'll know exactly when it starts diving because you have a depth sensor on it. And we're also now putting heart sensors on it too. So we'll be able to like feed the heart sensor into our whale language models that we're making.
Would the heart rate data be to try to judge if a whale's, agitated or calm or something while communicating? I mean, what's the heart rate give you?
We're not sure what's going to be valuable yet, but having a heart rate gives us an added bit of information.
Yeah, and if you're able to capture the data, you might as well, huh?
You might as well.
See. And so how much progress has Project SETI made so far? I mean, you're collecting a lot of data. How do you interpret that? How do you turn that into language?
So first, we needed to understand the fundamental units of how the whales are talking. We need to understand their voices and the way they're putting it together. So,
like the equivalent of finding the alphabet or something.
Exactly. So last year, we found an alphabet.
And that's a wrap on this season of Planet Visionaries. We've climbed mountains, dived oceans, and met people who are tackling the planet's biggest challenges with curiosity, courage, and relentless drive. Season 6 will be launching in the fall of 2026. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For now, go back and listen to those that you've missed. And we'd love to hear what you thought. If watching on Spotify or YouTube, please comment in the section below. If listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. Thanks again to all our brilliant guests. We'll put links to their work in the show notes. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.